Welcome to the Redemptive Economics Podcast, where we are empowering Christian entrepreneurs to make a redemptive economic impact here in Pittsburgh and beyond. Let's get to work! Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am your host, Mike Hatch, and I am so glad to have you along as we are helping Christian business owners make a redemptive economic impact by building profitable businesses of eternal significance. Man, we've got a great interview for you today, but just a quick reminder, remember, you can check out my new digital course, The Redemptive Enterprise, 15 Biblical Principles for Building a Profitable Business of Eternal Significance. Yes, your business can be a powerful redemptive instrument for God's kingdom. And in this course, you'll discover a robust theology around your vocational calling and professional influence for God's purposes as we unlock these 15 powerful biblical principles. Here is what one business owner had to say about the course. This course has helped tie several financial and economic ideas together with Christ's teaching in the Bible. I've been taught many of the Bible's lessons and how they apply to my life, but the subject of money or economic success was rarely part of it. This course has given me a ton of biblical context of how God views our contributions and wants us to make use of His resources. Smart, insightful, and valuable content. I highly recommend it. The entire course, all 12 sessions, are only $25, and you can access it through the link in the show notes. All right, hey, if you have any questions, please reach out to me at mhatch@redemptiveeconomics.com. I would love to hear from you. Or if you're local to Pittsburgh, it would be great to sit down with you, buy you coffee, and hear more about your journey in business. Lastly, if you are a business owner, our Truth at Work confidential peer advisory groups might be a great fit for you. Myself and my fellow chapter president, Dave Hartman, facilitate groups all over the Pittsburgh region, and they are an incredible life and business changing experience. We currently have openings and are accepting new members. All right, gang, let's go ahead and jump into this week's interview. Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am your host, Mike Hatch, and I am so glad to have you along as we are helping Christian business owners make a redemptive economic impact by building profitable businesses of eternal significance. Man, we've got a great interview lined up for you today, but just a quick reminder, you can check out my new digital course, The Redemptive Enterprise, 15 Biblical Principles for Building a Profitable Business of Eternal Significance. Yes, your business can be a powerful redemptive instrument for God's kingdom. And in this course, you'll discover a robust theology around your vocational calling and professional influence for God's purposes as we unlock these 15 powerful biblical principles. Here is what one business owner had to say about the course. Quote, "This course has helped tie several financial and economic ideas together with Christ's teaching in the Bible. I've been taught many of the Bible's lessons and how they apply to my life, but the subject of money or economics was rarely part of it. This course has given me a ton of biblical context of how God views our contributions and wants us to make use of His resources. Smart, insightful, and valuable content. I highly recommend it." Unquote. The entire course, all 12 sessions, are only $25, and you can access it through the link in the show notes. All right, hey, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. You can email me at mhatch@redemptiveeconomics.com. Or if you're local to Pittsburgh, it would be great to sit down with you, buy you coffee, and hear more about your journey in business. Lastly, if you are a business owner, our Truth at Work confidential peer advisory groups might be a great fit for you. Myself and fellow chapter president Dave Hartman facilitate these groups all over the Pittsburgh region, and they're an incredible life and business changing experience. We currently have openings and are accepting new members. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in to this week's interview. Hey, Tamara, welcome to the Redemptive Economics Podcast, man. It is great to have you back again.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks for inviting me back, Mike. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, and I kind of had to because I don't know if folks know, I've made mention this on social media, but you are the number one downloaded episode that I've recorded. So we needed to have you back, absolutely, because there's a lot of interest in how to fund businesses, obviously. So it makes sense. But let me give some background about you a little bit, so folks who might not know who you are. First of all, if you don't know who she is, you can go back to, I think, one of the first 10 episodes that we did. You shared more of your whole story, your faith journey, and what got you into founding EGR Financial Solutions. But for new folks who might be listening now who aren't privy to that information, let me just kind of give you some background that Tamara Bay serves as the president and CEO of EGR Financial Solutions, LLC, with an MBA and certification as a Six Sigma Green Belt. Oh, baby, don't mess with you. She brings nearly 2 decades of expertise in sales leadership, strategic planning and execution, account development, and relationship management. Throughout her career, Tamara has been consistently recognized for cultivating high-impact strategic partnerships. After spending the majority of her professional life in the healthcare industry, she felt a divine calling to transition out of corporate life and into the commercial lending space. As a servant leader, and oh my gosh, does that describe you, Tamara? Servant leader, so well. Tamara is passionate about guiding aspiring entrepreneurs toward their purpose and supporting established business owners through periods of growth or recovery. She collaborates with lenders across the country to identify and align the right financial solutions to meet her clients' unique business needs. Tamara firmly believes that extra grace is required to help entrepreneurs realize their dreams and elevate their businesses to the next level. Again, really, really great to have you, Tamara.
Thank you, Mike. Again, it's a pleasure. And I will have to, if you don't mind, just to piggyback on the fact that your podcasts are available. And so one woman, she was introduced to me into EGR Financial, but before reaching out, she did her own research on Tamara Bay, EGR Financial, and your podcast came up. So before I had a chance to connect with her, she came to me and she said, "Oh, I do know a little bit about you. I love your story. I had a chance to listen to your podcast when I went to research who you were." So,
That's fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Yes, that is exactly what this podcast is about. I think about the idea of passive relational equity, which gets to happen through social media to some extent. Mm-hmm. And with stuff like this, people get to hear your story, understand the way you think, your values, your mission, all that kind of stuff. They get acquainted with you through these conversations so that when they do call you and get in touch with you, they're not starting from ground zero, right? They at least have some idea. That's awesome.
So thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are a couple other stories I can think of too, where different business leaders have found each other through the podcast and then partnered in other projects and things. So, man, praise God. If the more Christians we can get who are collaborating, working together in entrepreneurial ways, benefiting the community, the more redemptive we can be. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so a few things we want to touch on. We were talking before. I think the first thing I'd love to start with, Tamara, is I'd love to get your take on kind of what the current situation is with the market right now, because there are a lot of questions out there right now. There's market instability. Bonds are doing wonky things. People are very concerned. Some people think we have an impending recession, although I think we've felt that way for 10 or 15 years now, I think. So I'm just curious, what are you seeing as you're interacting with financial institutions and entrepreneurs and business owners? What are some of the things that you see? What are the concerns you see? What are the opportunities that you see in moments like this?
No, absolutely. Great question, Mike. And so a few things. Number one, I am seeing folks that are more hesitant to invest in a business or their business. I'll give you a real live example. Just yesterday evening, I met with a husband and wife team. They're looking at starting a franchise together. And I noticed a little bit of hesitation from the wife, right? And now the questions are a little different, and the responses are a little are different as well. Where she mentioned, "Oh, but that's a lot of money," and then the husband mentioned, "Well, what happens if we do this for 2 years and things don't work out?" And so I think that is something that is very common when pursuing entrepreneurship. And in fact, they're both considering keeping their full-time jobs in addition to investing in this franchise. But you notice more of that fear, a little bit of hesitancy, which is common and is completely okay. And this is where we just have to hold on to our faith, right? Where we have to say, okay, faith over fear. God, where are you leading us to? But what I am seeing from a lending standpoint is, so the interest rates are still there. Prime is still at 7.5%, where it's been all year long, right? When we ended 2024, we experienced towards the latter part of 2024 a decrease in interest rates. And so we were really hopeful that we would carry that same energy into 2025. But unfortunately, we had so many factors beyond our control. And so there's still a lot going on. So the reality is that prime is still 8.5%, which determines a lot about where we go with interest rates. But I'll touch on the housing market. Interest rates are still pretty competitive. I even work closely with some lenders on primary and secondary residences in the mortgage industry. So in addition to investment properties, they're still competitive given where we are as a market. Another thing that is new and that has changed is where the SBA guidelines, effective June 1st, the SBA updated their guidelines. And so that's something else that lenders and their underwriting teams are getting adjusted to, as well as clients who are then introduced to these new guidelines through the process. Or, hey, I have two partners where we closed on a loan in September, and now we're working on their second location. Well, a lot has changed from an SBA guideline requirements from September versus June 1st. And so it's certainly still an opportunity to pursue business ownership, right? And it's just, as I mentioned earlier, to focus on the faith and not the fear. If this is truly the path that God has aligned for you, then guaranteed He'll provide everything it is that you need to fulfill that journey. But those are just some of the things that I have seen more often.
Yeah, and I agree. I would say that if God's laid it on your heart to start a business or buy a business or whatever, if it's falling into alignment, especially with like what I talk about on here, the 15 redemptive economic principles. So if it falls in alignment with God's will and biblical principles, I agree. He's going to provide, and it's going to be hard. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's going to be very challenging, as you and I both are well acquainted with starting our own businesses. But it's miraculous sometimes how God does come through and provide for those efforts. Because as Christians, that's what He wants. He wants us to have a redemptive influence in our local community.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. So that gives us some idea that clearly things are shifting. So it sounds like if folks, how do I say this? If people haven't been in the know recently, it would probably make sense to meet with you and get updated on kind of where things stand with their options, right?
Absolutely. And so, and I'll revert back to the meeting I had yesterday with the husband and wife team. And that's what it's really all about, understanding what your options are. Many times there's more than one option that is available to you. And so it's really about understanding what your options are, the advantages, disadvantages of each option, and really trying to discover which option best aligns with your scenario or the business you're investing in or the business you already own and where you're at in that business life cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Are you seeing less people want to start businesses versus other people maybe wanting to finance or grow their existing businesses?
I'm seeing still a combination, but one
Okay.
thing that, if you don't mind, I'd like to
Yeah,
highlight
absolutely.
is there is no time like the present. If you are thinking of starting a business, I'd like to challenge you to just temporarily shift your mindset and evaluate, what if I purchased the business instead? And I come to you from the place of with Western Pennsylvania. So, my background, as you read, I spent 20 plus years in the healthcare industry. So I certainly understand specifically Western Pennsylvania. We have one of the highest aging populations. And so how does that transition into business? Think about, Mike, those businesses that maybe you would frequent as a child growing up in Pittsburgh, or as a teenager or a young adult, that are no longer in existence. And so when we look at the number of baby boomers today in the market, it's going to be time to look at the businesses that they actually own. And unfortunately, not everyone has children that want to take over the business. And so what happens half the times, it's like, oh, well, Joe retired and decided to close down the business. So I would encourage everyone just for a short moment, transition your mindset to say, okay, what if I looked at buying a business? And so that's one of the things that, like I said, it's still a good mixture of those who are running their own business. But what I do see more of, Mike, are folks trying to think of, how can they invest in an additional stream of revenue? Again, which could be a great opportunity to buy a business. And the reason I say that, when you're buying a business, the bank is not just going to give you a loan to buy any business. So they're really going to help you also complete your due diligence. And chances are you're going to buy a business that's already generating revenue, already doing well. So it's not as much like when you start a business, you're going to have a few months where your expenses outweigh your revenue. You're going to have some months where you're not generating any revenue. But versus if you're going to buy a business, the bank is going to ensure that you'll buy a healthy business. And so those are just some things that I wanted to share on the podcast, and to really get your listeners, especially those who are thinking of buying a business, selling your business, or those who are thinking of opportunities for additional revenue streams.
That is really good. I'm really glad you brought that up. We're going to pull on this thread for a little bit because I think there's a lot of value here. So you're saying that banks will kind of partner with you in a way, maybe to help you find a business that would work well for you and for the financing purposes. Is that what you're saying? Like they'll actually work with you in trying to find a business?
That is correct. So, because when you think about it, you're going to have a checklist. And so I'm working in partnership right now with Beam Collaborative. And that's one of the areas they're looking at, focusing on mergers and acquisitions. But you're going to have your checklist. So let's say, Mike, if you come to me and you say, hey, Tamara, I want to buy this, I don't know, this restaurant. Let's just say a restaurant. I want to buy this restaurant in the city of Pittsburgh. What do you need from me to help me get a loan? And so I'm going to have a list of things, Mike, that I require from you and that I will also require from the seller. And that's where that due diligence comes in. And then hopefully you're working with a business broker or someone who can help you complete an evaluation of the business. And just to make sure, like, hey, they want to sell the restaurant for $2 million, but the business evaluation is what's going to allow you to determine whether or not the business is truly worth $2 million. But the bank is also going to help with that due diligence, because now when we look at the list from the seller side, we want to see the last several years of finances. We want to see year-to-date finances. We want to follow the trends, right? Because the numbers will tell a story. The truth is actually in the numbers. And so when I say that the bank is really partnering alongside of you, it's not just about, hey, let's get Mike this $2 million loan to buy this restaurant and let's make money from the interest that he's going to pay on the loan. But let's make sure that Mike is set up to buy a profitable business so that now, Mike, you can step into that restaurant or whatever that business may be, add your own flavor, and then now take that business to the next level and to continue to drive revenue and growth for that restaurant or whatever the business might be.
That was perfect. Add your own flavor to the restaurant. That was great.
No pun intended.
That was fantastic. That's good stuff. Okay. Very interesting. Do you, I can imagine in some ways, I know you're not technically a business broker, but you have some knowledge of other businesses around the area. And do you have relationship with business brokers as well?
Yes. So I'll use the example. So number one, I've been in communication with several different business brokers, but I mentioned the Beam Collaborative. And so we have a team at Beam where it's myself as their partner for lending. And then it's Murphy Business Brokers for those businesses. And so how we are set up in this partnership, someone can come to Beam Collaborative and either say, hey, can you help me buy a business? This is the industry. And then we look at the business broker to really gain more insight into that individual or that team of what their interests are, their values, et cetera, to help determine what business would be the best fit for them. Now, the good news is business brokers, they see it from both ends, right? They work with buyers and they work with sellers. And so it's always good to have that, someone who has that wealth of knowledge, which is why I think business brokers are a huge advantage for buyers and sellers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. Business brokers are a great thing to have in your corner and to help you navigate that process. I know there are online like websites and stuff, I think too, where you can browse businesses that are for sale. Okay. Yeah. So, if someone's looking to buy a business, they're listening to this and they're like, okay, I hadn't thought about that before. And because you're right, the way that our country is aging, the boomers are retiring, they're wanting to sell these businesses. What are some things that folks need to think about in buying a business, right? Like, so I don't know, do you have thoughts on the type of business that might be most lucrative, or it might be, or is it more like what's a best fit for them? What are some things they should be thinking about?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. What's the best fit for them, right? Because we use the restaurant as an example, but the reality is not everybody wants a brick and mortar, right? What is the work ethic? Like, how much time do they want to actually spend on the business versus in the business, right? You truly have to really do a needs assessment or analysis, which is why that partnership with the business broker, I think, is very advantageous. And so do you want, some folks would prefer a business that they can operate wherever they are in the world, right? I have a client I'm working with right now that it's more of a virtual business, no need to have a brick and mortar, things along those lines. I'm also working right now with a gentleman in more of the central PA area who is thinking of buying a business there, and there's some real estate tied to it. However, the seller wants to hold on to the real estate because then that helps the seller can continue to generate revenue by holding on to the real estate, and he's going to sell the business where the business will pay him rent, but he'll still have that stream of rent coming in versus selling it all. And so it's really doing a thorough needs analysis. How much time do you want to invest? What industries actually interest you? Where do you see an opportunity to take that business to the next level, right? Because as the market continues to change and things will evolve, right? Change is just the name of life, the way of life. And so you have to really think of not just, hey, I want to buy a successful business, but once you buy, what's your plan look like? And so that's also something, Mike, leading back to our previous discussion, where the bank's also going to want to see your business plan for that acquisition, right? So are you looking to just slide into the business and just hope that what's been happening will continue to work and continue to generate revenue? But where do you see the opportunity to really make a change, to say, okay, here's where we are today with this business, but once I take over as the CEO of this business, here's where I would like to see it, and here's my plan to get it there.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you bring, as someone who's buying the business, obviously you bring your own unique talents and gifts and abilities to lend themselves to the business, right?
Yes.
And growing it. So, which harkens back to what you said at the beginning, really take inventory yourself of what, yes. Take inventory of yourself, literally. How much time, like you said, how much time do you want to spend on this? And then find the business that's the right fit for you. I really like that. Kind of a more principled back to basics approach in a sense. And I think can hopefully help prevent you from, as a good friend Joe Hadoba likes to say, prevents you from chasing the squirrels, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Mike, we oftentimes don't consider, like, hey, I want to start a business in this industry. Or let's say I'm a CPA and I decide I want to start my own accounting firm. But maybe in that shift of mindset, is there an accounting firm that's currently for sale that I may be able to buy? So again, I'm not starting from ground zero.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. And then there's a proven reputation. There's probably a customer base. I mean, there's all sorts of really good, appealing things about that. Man, that is amazing. Okay. So then, all right. I'd love to hear, Tamara, from you as far as like, is there a story, and I know you might have to, you can't necessarily, how do I say this, name names or be specific about certain businesses, but what's some really inspirational kind of story you've seen or participated in recently with regards to someone, garnering some financing to be able to buy or improve their business or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so there are a few of those, Mike, and it leads me back to the why, right? It's a reminder of my why, and I've shared this with you. You're certainly no stranger to my story, but how Extra Grace Required started, right? Yeah. And so that is my commitment to every client, every potential client. And so I'll give you the example of a woman who recently I was able to help her get funding to start a restaurant. And as I mentioned, this year with changes coming in SBA and folks just waiting for prime to go down, there's been some challenges with certain banks, and their underwriting departments are a little bit, slower than others. And what you see that starts to happen with some folks is you start to see the fear, you start to see the questioning, you start to see the disappointment. And oftentimes underwriters will come back with clarifying questions, right? They will come back because that's likely the other.
Wait, so you're saying underwriters can be helpful is what I hear you saying. That's crazy.
Right. And so that's something that I didn't hit on earlier when you mentioned, what changes, right? So one of those changes is I've noticed a lot more questions coming back from underwriting than what may be the norm, because they're also under a lot of scrutiny as well as an underwriting team. And so this particular woman, she stuck it out. But we've experienced different emotions, right? The highs and the lows, the discouragement, the disappointment. And so something that I share with her, and I also even share this with my real estate investors who may have an appraisal that comes back a little disappointing, or who may have a little bit of a delay in the closing. And I always I say to them, and the delivery may come across different, but it sums up to the same as God's will. And just remind it, right? Because, and we touched on this already, if this is what God has intended for you, there's not an underwriter that can stand in the way. There's not a delayed process that could stand in the way. And we are emotional beings. So it's easy to get in our head and to say, oh, well, this shouldn't happen, that shouldn't happen. And so in these instances, right, I was sure to make myself available to this woman because I feel like that is my calling, is to serve others. And it looks different for the different business owners or prospective business owners, but was to truly make myself available. And, however I could lend an ear or just sort of redirect her and even encourage her. I even had that very recently. I'm working with a woman right now, and we initially started the process with one lender who was very sure that this was the deal that they could get done. However, once underwriting gets involved, you start peeling back the curtains, and each lender has different criteria. So just because this lender was more of your traditional banking lender, which is why it makes sense. And they thought, okay, well, they actually look at who the business contracts are set up with and how they're dispersed as far as percentages. So let's say you're doing Truth at Work and you want to sell your chapter, and they're going to look at the chapter that has 10 members a lot differently than they look at the chapter that has 3 or 4 members, right? Because if 1 or 2 of those members go away, then that really impacts your revenue. And so I witnessed her getting a little discouraged. And she thought that by the one lender saying this isn't going to work for us, she took that as a no. And so that's where I, again, had to make sure that I got in touch with that emotional side. I know how that would be, and reached out just to let her know, like, hey, just want to provide some clarification. Just because it wasn't a fit for this lender doesn't mean that we're not going to find the lender. Now, we're just looking at several other lenders at once, just for a time savings standpoint.
That's so good. That's so good. I know you, as I mentioned in the intro, like, you are a servant leader and you love coming alongside people. I mean, this is your ministry. It really is. I know that. And you pour yourself out to these folks, really connecting with them and showing compassion and empathy for their journey and the challenges that's what I love about it. When folks work with you, they're not in it alone at all. They're getting an advocate. They're getting a partner in a sense. At least emotionally and spiritually, for sure.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And if you don't mind, it made me, it just brought me to, there was one interaction that I had with someone who I've met a year and a half ago. And so we've developed a great working relationship. And so I had the opportunity, and we're talking very complex projects that he was working on. And then also time was of the essence. And it was one of those things where sometimes we look at the end, right? We just focus on the end, almost like we have tunnel vision. We don't see everything else that could happen. We don't see what God may be trying to teach us and why he doesn't bring us to that end as soon as we would like to get there. But one of the most touching things, where we were working on 2 complex projects together, and I, being quite honest, I started losing hope. And although I was losing hope, it didn't change the amount of time that I invested in those projects, or that I invested in this particular client who I'd like to consider my brother in Christ. And so one morning we were having a conversation, and he said to me, he started sharing what was happening with a community bank that he had been working with, and the level of communication, or I should say lack of communication and responsiveness that he received. And so he was just sharing in what his frustrations. And he said, I don't know. I went to God, and I'm just asking God, what is he trying to show me, or what message is he sending? And he said, and I believe God is telling me that I need to work with someone I know and I trust. And he said, and I trust you. And you have worked so hard on my behalf. And he goes, I want to see it that you help me bring these projects to completion. And that was a reminder of the why, right? And when I started this journey, right, I said, okay, extra grace required. That is my commitment to extend that extra grace to everyone that I encounter. But Mike, what I didn't do well is I didn't extend that grace to myself. And I came from corporate, where I was just so used to producing, just, okay, these are my goals, no problem. And so as an entrepreneur, it's a lot different. And I didn't extend that grace to myself.
Man, well, thank you for sharing that and just being transparent with that, because you're right. We all have our moments, don't we?
Yes.
We all do, where we're just ready to throw in the towel
Oh,
sometimes.
absolutely.
That's why having people around us is so important, who love us and care for us and are for us and are willing to kind of encourage us in what we're doing, or help us course correct, whatever it is. We need those relationships. We can't do it alone. Okay, so I did a few episodes ago about loans and bank loans and all this kind of stuff, and one of the things that I mentioned or talked about was this idea of kind of peer-to-peer lending, or it might be known as hard money lending, or I think we talked about honeycomb credit before, which is like a crowdfunding organization that helps businesses crowdfund investments from even current, actually more so for current businesses, crowdfunding from current customers, a customer base that they already have. So I'm curious about your perspective on that, and what for folks who might want to avoid actually even some ramifications of taking bank loans and would rather try to do something more along the lines of a peer-to-peer situation. What have you learned there, and what are some of those solutions that you've found?
Okay, absolutely. And what's interesting, it's you just made, before you went into this question, I don't know if you realized that you made the comment that that this is all a reminder that we don't have to go at it alone, right? And so
I see where you're going. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just a reminder of, even in your journey of entrepreneurship, it's back to the old saying, right? Two heads are better than one. And we know biblically that three strands is where it all comes together.
Amen.
But what I have seen is, I'll hit on what you said, even the hard money loans or the venture capitalists, or there's just so many other opportunities. And really, if you have something that differentiates you when it comes to a venture capitalist, something that differentiates you that others would want to invest in, or something that is very hot on the market that others would want to invest in. And I think the honeycomb, I think that's a genius idea and a great way for your current customer base to invest in your business, but then also get a return out of it, right? So they get to help you see your business come to fruition, but then they also get to reap some benefits financially. And so hard money loans are still out there, right? Most of the hard money comes at a higher interest rate. And that's where I like more of the private lenders versus the hard money. Some sort of overlap, but there is a true differentiation. And it just goes back into creative financing, right? There's so many different opportunities that could exist out there for a business to get financing. And again, another reason why you don't have to go at it alone, because you don't know what you don't know. And so then in turn, you have to give yourself some grace and say, who can I tap into so that I can truly get an understanding of what the options are that are out there, or to do some research and understanding what options exist for that business industry you're looking to crack into, or maybe you're already there and you need additional funding to get to that next level, or to maybe help close the gap.
Yeah, typically, where would you go? I don't even know if you know this. I'm curious. Where would someone go if they wanted to find private lending? Like, is there? I don't know.
Other than EGR Financial?
Well, that's right. Sorry. Yeah. That. Of course. But it's just easier. I guess your bank is. Your bank, or banks in general. They're very out there. You see them all the time. Who is it with money that's just out there lending it, right?
Right. Yeah. And your bank is still always a great place to start. I mean, I have to just hats off, because a lot of my referrals come from my banking partners. And so hats off to those partners, because I'll even sometimes when I get a referral, well, not sometimes, when I get a referral from a bank, I stay in close communication as to what's happening with that client, because oftentimes, if that client is declined by a bank because maybe there's a challenge in the cash flow, or declined by a bank because there's something that owner needs to work on, then the goal is to get them back to the bank, not leave them on private money for long term, because it's not going to be what if you had a much more competitive profile, what you can get at that bank where you've been banking for 20 years or 30 years. I'll give you an example as a startup company, right? So most of our banks, depending on the industry, other than an SBA loan, may not necessarily invest in a startup company. And I'll use an example of a gentleman I was just working with. He wanted to purchase a dump truck for $140,000, $50,000. And he was referred by one of my banking partners because there's just not the appetite for equipment for a startup business. And so as a result, I was able to help him find multiple options. But what he didn't realize, he came to the table and he was hoping for an interest rate at 8 to 10%. But with a private money loan, you're a startup, so that's automatically high risk. You're in transportation. There are a lot of banks who steer away from transportation. And for so many other reasons, you're just getting started where there's zero cash flow to even show how well your business would actually do. And the most competitive I was able to get him was a 15% interest rate. And when I share it with his banker, nope, that's too high for him. He wants something more competitive. My lending partner, his banker, said, I need to have a conversation with him. He needs to reconsider. And again, because what you may be able to get from the local bank, if it doesn't work out for one reason or another, there is a reason why there are other options, number one, that are available, but there's a reason why you may have to consider another option. It's not a bad thing. Some folks might like to say, hey, it's alternative lending. It's not necessarily alternative lending. It goes back to what I mentioned earlier, just knowing what your options are, right? Knowing that you have options that are available to you. It may not look black and white, where you can just walk into PNC Bank, First National Bank, and say, hey, this is what I want for my business.
This just occurred to me. How many people do you come to you looking for lending, and then you kind of have to educate them about the fact that they've got to kind of go back to the basics and, okay, let's get a business plan together. Do you know what I mean? Are there things that like people haven't maybe done initially that they automatically think, well, I need to find funding, but wait, the idea is still in your head. You got to get it out and show, some proof of work, I guess. Do you see that often?
I do see it. Not as often, I'll say, as when I started, but also keep in mind that, the longer I do this, the more strategic that I am as well. And what the life cycle looks like, or not the sales cycle, because I'm not selling anything. If anything, I want to sell a partnership with myself and the prospective client. But I do see that. And then there are some ways. I'll give you an example right now. I'm working with a client who's interested in purchasing a beer distributor. And so we go over the options. So in his case, that's a perfect example where there's no business plan in place. And sometimes what happens when you even start to mention, we need to get your business plan, your projections in place. You need to do your homework from a market analysis so that you can embed that information into your business plan. Sometimes that just listening to that is overwhelming to someone. And they may say, okay, well, what other options do I have? Right. So that lets me know, okay, maybe we look at doing an unsecured loan because the chances of getting a solid business plan from this person may not work. But what I always do, I revert them to the closest small business development center that they have to them. Oftentimes I'm referring them to Pitt because I have personal experience with Pitt. I'm a Duquesne alumni, but my SBDC experience, Small Business Development Center experience, is with the University of Pittsburgh, where they have an amazing program, amazing resources. And so that's usually where I'm reverting them to. And sometimes there may be options depending on your profile. It just depends. And this gets me to, if you don't mind, I'll share just one of the biggest challenges and misunderstandings that I see is where oftentimes they'll come and they'll say, well, no, I don't want to use my personal credit. I don't want to be a guarantor. I want to use my business credit. And so that's kind of two different things we're touching on. But
yeah,
anytime you are trying to secure a loan, you will always be the guarantor. So your personal credit will always play a role in the terms, the rates, the things that you get. However, it will be in the business name if that's how the loan is actually set up. And so that's one of the things that I see. And oftentimes folks, they use their personal credit almost too much to build their business, where in some of those instances, their personal credit starts to suffer as a result. But I always try to encourage them to use their business credit. And when you are starting a business and you're looking to use your business credit, you will likely have to complete a business plan with projections.
Interesting. Okay. So you will pretty much always have to leverage your personal credit for your business. Unless it's like some big business maybe that's, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm imagining it's some business that's shown tremendous, revenue for long periods of time.
Yes. And we're talking small businesses. We're talking entrepreneurship. And, sometimes someone will say, hey, well, I've been in business for 2 years, right? So let's just use the example. Let's just say EGR Financial decided that we want to now go brick and mortar in the city. We want to buy a small building in the city and see clients there frequently. Well, when I go to apply for a loan for that building, I'm applying under EGR Financial Solutions. However, I'm also applying as a guarantor Tamara Bay. They want to make sure that Tamara Bay has a good payment history. They want to know what Tamara Bay's credit looks like to make sure she can actually pay her bills. Now, there are some instances where they're going to look at both your personal and your business credit, but it's your personal credit that links you to being a guarantor on that business loan. And so it's always important to maintain both your business and your personal credit. And there's been some instances, Mike, just to make sure I'm painting the picture clear, where I've had some folks in different industries. We've had landscaping, plumbing, just different contractors, subcontractors, where maybe they want to purchase a new piece of equipment, and they've said, well, I don't want to use my personal credit. I want to use my business credit. So then we have to clarify there. But then there's also some instances where we do the research and it comes back, they may end up having dings on both personal credit and business credit. Doesn't mean that we can't help them get the equipment, which we've actually had at least one scenario. So it doesn't mean establish business credit and don't give it as much love or attention as you would give your personal credit. You still want to take care of both, but know that you will always be a personal guarantor and your personal credit will always play a role, even if you have zero business credit and even while you're establishing your business credit.
Man, okay. That's good. That's really good to know. All right, so I'm going to turn the tables real quick in a second, or in a way, I guess. I want to talk about the possibly the people who might be out there and they're, who knows, maybe they're listening, but that they may want to invest in a business. Maybe they are the private equity person who's like, I have some resources and I'd be interested in learning more about businesses to invest in or folks to help. What words of advice or encouragement would you have for someone like that?
I'd say get connected to business brokers, connected to small business development centers, connected with commercial loan brokers such as myself. And first you have to plant the seed, right? You have to plant the seed that you have that interest, and also share as many specifics as you can about your interests there, so that you are planting the seed. And now we know we're almost like your sales development team, but a little different, because now we are bringing a solution that's going to help you as the investor generate wealth, but can certainly help a business owner or aspiring business owner. So that's the first thing, is to certainly plant those seeds. And then number two, if you're willing to do that, then chances are you already have an understanding or have paperwork drawn up and what the stipulations would look like, right? Working with your legal team to make sure that you have a great contract in place. So once together, we're able to help you identify that business and that business owner to invest in. You've already done the paperwork on the legal side, and now we can help you find someone and something that aligns with your needs. And like I mentioned, I think the honeycomb, what they're doing, I think it's great. So it's a great opportunity to invest in a business that you're already spending money with.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But it's so funny. That's so weird. It comes back to relationships again, Tamara. That's so interesting.
Cannot do it alone. And forgive me. I was reading the first few chapters, or listening on my way to my morning meeting of Ecclesiastes. And that's exactly where we are reminded that we are not meant to go at it alone.
That's right. Absolutely. We weren't created for that. So, okay. So then as we're wrapping up here, man, this has flown by. I'd love to hear your kind of updated perspective on just your own entrepreneurial journey, challenges, celebrations, the joys. And we've already both mentioned the fact that, sometimes we have moments where you want to throw in the towel, you want to look at other options, because it's really hard. Yeah. But tell us a little bit about you and where you are in your journey and some of the things that you're learning, because we're crazy to think about. It's been a year since we talked last on here.
May of 2024 was our first podcast recording.
Yeah.
So it's funny how time has flown by. And when I tell you, I have to go back to when I started this, I was not giving myself enough grace. I was not constantly sending the reminders that I would give clients or potential clients, that I was not feeding that back to myself, right? Yeah. Faith over fear. And so you're right. There's been it's been a learning journey. There have been so many lessons that God has revealed to me through the journey of entrepreneurship. Yeah. And so that's really what I had to do was change my mindset when things weren't going the way that I thought, in my mind, the way I thought that they should, is more so, okay, God, what are you showing me? What am I supposed to learn? What are you teaching me? And just really pushing forward. And I mean, we're also all called to reflect his light and his love.
Amen.
And how can I be that light to someone who may be looking at buying a business, or who may be in business and may be struggling, or in wherever they are in the business ownership continuum? How can I be a light? And so just reminding myself, and I've shared this time and time again, I thrive off of being able to be of service. That's where I find most joy. And it does not mean, he never said that it would be easy, right? And like when I go back to corporate, I was always that person who, okay, what's my next challenge going to be? Or I'd land a role. Okay, once I check all the boxes here and do well, what do I see next? And so I will tell you, this journey has been nothing short of those challenges that I longed for time and time again in corporate. It's been nothing short of that. And just certainly just lessons that I know has only made me a stronger, a better woman of God. Certainly still a lot more to learn. And I just have to remember, right? We are gifted with new grace and mercy each day, every morning when our feet hits the floor. And yes, we are called to extend that grace and that mercy to others, but we are also called to extend it to ourselves, right? It goes back, I don't know if you've been hearing this a lot more lately, where they say, hey, when you're on a plane, you receive instructions that you can't help someone put on their oxygen mask if you don't have yours on first. And
Right.
so that's where and I'll be coming up on 2 years soon. And so those are the things for me, is just giving myself grace, making sure that I am just taking care of myself mentally and physically. And then God will allow me to continue to pour into others, to help them build their businesses, to help them take their businesses to the next level, and to truly be the partner that He's called me to be to His sons and daughters.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. I love that. We need God's grace every bit as much as those that we are extending God's grace to. Absolutely. We cannot forget that. We need to walk every day, every moment, sometimes every minute,
Yes.
reminding ourselves of God's unconditional love of us. Yes. And as you just exemplified, being in God's word and allowing Him to remind us of His love for us, and that He is for us, and that we are not alone, but that He is with us. Unfortunately, our sinful kind of human ways will creep up, and we can deceive ourselves easily, unfortunately. So, got to keep the truth in front of us, and thank you for that, Tamara. That was really good. Appreciate that.
No, thank you, Mike.
Good. All right. Well, any last minute encouragements you might have for entrepreneurs or business leaders who might be listening to this right now?
What I would say is, despite of what we see and hear going on in the world, right, there's always going to be news, good news, bad news. Right?
Yeah.
But if you stay locked in and just your focus on building the kingdom, right, and what redemptive economics is all about, what you are instilling in your listeners, right, into your brothers and sisters of Christ, if we stay anchored in, I could just promise you that the sense of peace that comes along with that truly, truly surpasses all understanding. And I think the rest will work itself out. It's the peace as a business owner or aspiring business owner, right? Yeah. I think that is what's most important. And so if you stay anchored in first, and then you go out there and you pursue those business endeavors like never before. There are so many resources that are out there, so many teams. And just to remember, you do not have to go at it alone. We were not created to go at it alone. And so I'm here. I'm only a phone call away. If you log on to the website at egrfinancialsolutions.com, you can even set up a quick 15-minute chat. I love meeting new folks. I love learning about other people. And one of the things that I love more than anything is praying with people. And so even if you want to set up a call just to say, I don't know which way to go, I'm in distress, can you pray for me? That would actually make my day.
Yes.
That is what I love more than anything.
As a recipient of that prayer from you, Tamara, from when you were part of our Truth at Work group, let me just say, oh my gosh, let me affirm you, that is absolutely a spiritual gift of yours. So folks, please reach out to her and let her just encourage you through prayer. It is an incredible experience. So appreciate that gift in you, Tamara.
Praise God.
Yeah. Well, gosh, man, thank you so much, Tamara. This has been fantastic, as usual. Really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No, Mike, the pleasure was all mine. It was our 1 year podcast anniversary. So I appreciate you inviting me back and just allowing me to share. Again, it's my commitment. As God pours into me, it's my duty to pour into others and to be a blessing.
Amen. Let's get to work.